Hello and welcome back to Gosport Stories. This is a media space podcast supported by Gosport Borough Council. You're joining us here at the Media Space, which is our new podcasting studio in Gosport and Media Hub, down in Priddy's Hard in the Heritage Buildings near to the Powder Monkey Brewery and the Explosion Museum. So this podcast series is Gosport stories told by Gosport people. Our aim is to record and share conversations about our community, heritage and culture. My name is Nick Vanderwire. I am a local social entrepreneur activist, and this is my studio. And I am honoured to introduce you today to Mike Critchley. Hello, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
So, Mike, I think we first met in the community where I was working on Gosport Marine Festival, and at that time you had a bookshop / information office in the old bus station. So that's how I know you. What would you say to people in Gosport if they hadn't met you before? How would you describe yourself? How would you introduce yourself?
Gosport, I nearly was going to say born and bred. I wasn't born. There was a war on. But days after birth, I came to Gosport, lived in the family home till I was 14. We lived down by, I think it's called Workhouse Creek. That house all demolished. It's an old people's home looking out over the creek, but very happy memories of living there. Learned to swim in the creek. Can you imagine that, looking at it today?
So what year were you born, sir?
45.
Okay.
So, yes, all the mums of Gosport at that stage were taken, well, I'm not saying all mums, but most of the mums were taken to safety near Winchester. There was a big house taken over by their equivalent, the NHS, I guess, and all the mums gave birth up there because the war was just finishing, actually. I was born on the glorious 1st of June, but that's where it all started.
So your mum was, so it was because Gossport's proximity to the coast and to Portsmouth, it was a more dangerous area. So they took people further inland up to near Winchester.
Yeah.
So tell me about your mum and dad. What were they? What kind of people were they?
My grandparents were both shipwrights, carpenters in the Navy. My father, I have to say this very quietly, was in the Royal Air Force, living in Gosport. So Dad was a flight sergeant, Royal Air Force, and he went around many Air Force bases, as you would expect. But my mother, a very bright woman, never worked in the traditional sense, and she looked after her father, my grandfather. And to be absolutely honest with you, my grandfather brought me up because my father was never around. He was dotting around RAF bases. I never lived on an RAF base. I don't think I even went to an RAF base. So I feel I've missed out a lot in having a father locally, but I had a superb grandfather. It's almost emotional. Yes, so he brought me up.
So he was the big influence in your life in those early years.
Yes.
Living, and he was based in Gosport as well, was he?
Yes, my mother looked after him.
Okay.
So he, as I say, bottom of Prince Alfred Street, mother looked after him. He died when I was about 8, and this is an issue that some people were warm to, that I didn't know he was dying, but I was shunted off to a friend's for the weekend. And of course, an 8-year-old boy wants to go and spend the weekend with his mates. But when I came back, Granddad wasn't there. And I don't know, there'll be people watching this that have had a similar thing, but anyway, that's what happened. So from 8, it was just my mother bringing me up and Dad when he was around.
Okay. So do you have like a particular memory from that time, a formative memory beyond obviously that sad losing your granddad? Is clearly, I can see that's affected you. But as a young as a young man, how did you identify yourself? I mean, no spoilers, but you ended up joining the Navy, right?
Yeah, sure, but that was when I was 7. You had to be 17 and a half to join the Navy. I was 17 and a half because my birthday was on the first day of the month, but we can get on to that later.
Yeah.
My memory as a young lad, in those days, that the fresh veg was brought round by a horse and cart. I am that old, Nick. A mother who's a keen gardener had me following the horse and cart round Gossport with a bucket and a shovel for you-know-what to improve the quality of the roses. So that was a pretty strong memory of those days. There were others.
So for the garden.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, did you? What do you think you'd like to share with people now of your experience of how Gosport's changed? Maybe.
Well, the house I grew up in, which was right at the bottom of Prince Alfred Street, overlooking the creek and looking up Park Road, built by my grandfather, as I say, a carpenter in the Navy. We lived there till I was 14, and then the dampness down there got to my mother, and for arthritis reasons, we moved all the way to Privet Road. So then, when I was in the Navy, I used to come back to Gosport quite a lot because I was a book publisher, and I used to sell my books in the Gosport Bookshop, as was in the High Street. And I remember coming back once, and the family home had gone, and there was this very big block of old people's homes, an old people's home, lovely place, because years later, there was a lady in my life I'd called Auntie. She wasn't really, but she was there as an OAP, and I used to go and spend the weekend, spend overnights when I was in Gosport selling books, really. And I had the spare bedroom, but it had the same view up Park Road as I remember from my bedroom before they knocked the house down, again up Park Road. It was very odd being in that old people's home with that same view.
That's really interesting, and we'll come on to talk about your work as an author and as a publisher. But I think it'd be useful just to kind of stick with the chronology of the things.
Sure.
So you're that young man, and it's always what always fascinates me is that decision to sign up, to join up, to as you say, it sounds like you were waiting till you were 17 and a half to join the Navy. It was like a ticking clock almost. Do you think there was what was it just living in Gosport that was what you did, or was it the influence of your family, or?
Well, I think the thing we haven't mentioned is I did actually go to school initially at the age of 5, just along to what was called Stoke Lane School, I think. Stone Lane School. It changed its name later, but I was considered to be a bit bright. Not sure about that, but anyway. So I went to Portsmouth Grammar School at the age of 8. So I was going across the ferry from the age of 8 to the age of 17. So I got to see a lot of the Navy, and I became pretty desperate to join the Navy. I didn't care if I was an officer or a sailor, I understand counselling is available for people like me these days, but in those days, yes. So I used to go across to Portsmouth Grammar School every day. To be honest, I was not very happy about that because we used to go to school on Saturday mornings. Well, you should be climbing trees on Saturday mornings, not going to school and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to say I was super bright for 1 minute, but I just messed around a fair bit at school, to be honest. I got O-levels as it was in those days, but people who know my past, that I wrote books and published books, was the fact I failed my English language first time round. So there is hope for people that fail things. People do come good. Yes, so across the ferry every day, Portsmouth Grammar School, but I can't say I loved it.
The going over to Portsmouth Grammar School.
Yes.
Was that because it was taking you away from your home and your mates? And
absolutely.
Right.
Go to school on Saturday morning, for goodness sake.
So how did your mates, do you remember how your peers how did that come about, you going over to the grammar school? Was it just the done thing, and was it an opportunity that, you weren't allowed to turn down, kind of thing?
Well, parents scrimped and saved. Dad was a flight sergeant. Mum was looking after her father. So it was pretty difficult. There was money involved. I think I got a bit of a scholarship, or, probably got a 50% discount or something. So yes, it was difficult for them, but I did vow that when I had children, no way would they go to school on a Saturday. And my kids have not gone to school on a Saturday.
So that's the abiding memory.
Absolutely.
The really not wanting to have to go over and do stuff on a Saturday when you could be back here in Gosport playing with your mates.
Yes.
Right. So it sounds like as the decision to join the Navy just came naturally from just being in the environment? Did you join? Were there lots of other your peers, say at the grammar school? Was that something that they were doing as well?
Yes, I think we had to join the cadets at schools.
Ah.
We all had to go into the army. I remember coming as an army cadet to the Brown Down camp out here. That wasn't particularly wonderful. But then after a while in the army cadets, you could be promoted to the Navy cadets. I was very keen on all that sort of stuff and went away as 14, 15, 16-year-olds to various naval establishments. So the Navy had a good chance to indoctrinate me on what a great life it was. And it was, don't knock it. I mean, yes, so it was helpful having Portsmouth Grammar School on your application form for Dartmouth.
Is that the Naval College?
Yes, that's the Naval College down in Devon.
Right. So that's where you ended up, was it? When you ended up, you joined up and you ended up at Dartmouth?
Yes. As I say, you had to be 17 and a half. I was 17 and a half. Well, first of all, I had to do the interviews, and they're all carried out in Gossport at HMS Sultan, Admiralty Interview Board. And in those days, there were, I think, about 120 people started off the interviews on a Monday. And as the days go by, they cut the guys down.
Wow.
And I think only 5 of us got in. I say that I got in because there's all these young lads from all around the country, and there's a admiral, there's a headmaster, there's a psychiatrist, and there's lots of stuff in gyms and intelligence tests and practical stuff. Anyway, when I come in front of the admiral, he says, "Oh, I see you left school a while ago." I left school at the earliest opportunity.
Which
He
was?
said, probably 16.
Right.
Yes. Grammar. Yes. Anyway, that's what I did. And my first job was as a petrol pump attendant, Rana Motors, Rana Road. Found my pay slip the other day. It was £7. Is that for a week? Anyway. So I started off there, and in those days you could just do a job. You got fed up with it, you find another job and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'm doing the Navy interviews. The Admiral says, poor bloke interviewing these boring school kids, all day, every day. Anyway, he said, "You left school a year ago, probably, and what have you done since?" So cheeky 17-year-old says to this Admiral, "Do you know Privet Road, sir?" To which he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, my parents live down in Privet Road, and also," putting my hands on the table, "I painted the white line down it yesterday because I was working for Gosport Borough Council and I still had all the white around my nails and hadn't managed to get it all off." So I tell people that I got into the Royal Navy because I did a good job painting the white line down Privet Road. That might not be true.
So the Admiral was impressed with how you'd applied yourself, was he? He thought you were a doer.
I ended up in Dartmouth, a few weeks later. But then I joined Dartmouth on a Sunday evening, as you would expect. And by the Thursday, I was back in Gosport. And the reason I was here was to do the submarine escape tank, 17 and a half. It's not a pleasant experience for a child.
And that's still the same tank that's still there in what was HMS Dolphin.
That's right.
So you can now go and see it from the Submarine Museum, and it's quite a landmark, isn't it?
Oh, very much.
So you left Gosport, went to Dartmouth, and then got sent back to.
Loads of us, a busload, came up from Dartmouth. It was the beginning of Polaris. Polaris was just, the ballistic missile submarines were just coming on stream, and anyone who could stand up in uniform, they wanted to make into a submariner. So we had all of 3 or 4 days at Dartmouth. We're back on the bus up here to do the tank. I didn't find it easy, and it was a bit frightening, to be honest with you. Anyway, so by Thursday, I think, we'd done the tank. We're going back to Dartmouth, but we had to go down Privet Road. So I said, "Could you stop outside number 66? He did. So I'm ringing the doorbell for Mother, saying I'm back. She thought
with a busload of your classmates.
She thought I'd failed, and so I just said, "Oh, Mum, here I am," and told her the story and drove back to Dartmouth.
That's really interesting. What really jumped out at me in that story, Mike, is the importance of the cadet force, which is something the cadets are still a big thing in Gosport, particularly with my involvement in Gosport Marine Festival. Seeing the cadets, and actually I think the roots of the festival, I'm going to learn more about that in further podcast conversations that I've got lined up, but I think originally it kind of really came out of the Sea Cadets based at based at Hornet, the Marine Festival did.
Makes sense.
But then also what really leaped out from your story was this thing of, it wasn't these days, it feels like the armed services are really desperate for people to join. And it seems like a sure thing, but it sounds like it was quite rigorous with over 100 people wanting to get in, and then it being whittled down to actually quite a few. So it must have felt like quite a privilege, or you'd done well to get in at all.
Yes, I think so. It's all about numbers. Anyone listening to this, the Navy's short 1 minute, it's got enough the next, and it's short of engineers, but it's always short of engineers. But so I just struck a time, I guess, when lots of people applied, but there weren't many slots. So
right.
Yeah,
which was in the, I'm guessing, early 60s, was it? Late 50s, early 60s? I'm trying to do the maths.
Oh dear. I joined the Navy.
You were 17 and a half, you say?
Yes.
You were 45, born in 45, so 62, 63?
January 63.
Right, there you go.
That's a long time ago. Nelson didn't. No, he wasn't around.
So, and you were saying it was interesting that there was a lot of recruitment going on for submariners.
Yes.
But from what I know, you didn't end up in the submarine service. How come?
Because I fought like crazy. I didn't want to be a submariner.
Right.
As simple as that. But they didn't give up because it appeared in the Portsmouth Evening News that I wanted to be a submariner. It was talk about propaganda. I did not want to be a submariner. And then they said, well, you'd really like some time on a submarine in Malta. So yes, I go out to a submarine in Malta. Ancient World War II thing called HMS Thermopylae. And, you're 17 and a half. No, I was 18 by then. You're underwater, the thing's creaking away, and, living in absolutely appalling conditions where you don't have a bunk. They roll the torpedoes together and you live in the gap. You want me to sign a bit of paper that this is the way forward? No, thank you.
So you managed to avoid it somehow.
I did.
By just sheer willpower, it sounds like you managed to avoid going under the water. And I'm sure lots of people listening, viewing, want to hear a lot of your stories about your time in the Navy. So much so that we're going to plan to have, I might start its own podcast actually, stories just about your time in the services, collecting those. You've brought in one of your books today, which has a lot of your stories in. And I think it'd be great to capture those, but probably in a different episode, because this is Gossport stories. So it's really about your experience in Gossport. But as a quick kind of summary, you've mentioned before that you became kind of a writer and a publisher. Did your time in the Navy influence you towards that career? Were there skills that you learnt there?
It was amazing, the skills that you did learn in the Navy, that you didn't actually appreciate how good they would be outside. I was a torpedo anti-submarine officer. You don't see many adverts for those in civilian life, but it wasn't difficult getting a job out of the Navy. And well, here I am still, still having employment. I'm 81 now, and I'm still trying to retire, but we'll get there one day.
We'll come on to talk about your current life and the projects that you've done recently, but I think it's really I'm really interested to kind of learn about the format, the kind of the man that you became and the influences that had on it. So I guess cutting to the chase, it's like, why did you become an author and a publisher kind of when you got out? And did you just kind of fall into it? Was it?
I came out, I had a pretty high-flying job in London. I was getting married to a lady who was a widow at 24, I think, with a baby. Long story there. She was on the Wirral. I was living in Watford. My last job was in the fleet headquarters at Northwood. And basically we decided that I didn't want to work on the Wirral and she didn't want to work in London or come to those places. So I was happy to resign I was doing a public relations job in London.
I was going to ask, you said you had this kind of high-flying job, but didn't give any details. So what you were doing, public relations.
Well, for the Navy, and then I got moved into number 10 for a bit.
Oh, wow.
Well, Callaghan was the Prime Minister, and he had this bee in his bonnet that we should be training more professional engineers. We call engineers in this country anyone from a garage guy repairing our cars to the guy building a nuclear power station. So Callaghan, that was a big thing for him. He formed a 32-piece committee to put their mind to it. And I was lent from the Ministry of Defence to that committee for a year. Working in central London was not my bag. I was getting married. So I thought, what am I going to do? I saw an old edition of the UK Press Gazette, which is where journalist jobs are advertised. I'd been trained by the Sunday Express, one day a week stuff for the MOD in central London. Went to Northwood because there were 4 press people there. Northwood is a naval base, North London.
Okay.
4 press officers, 2 civilians, 2 naval officers, and three of them went on a Sunday afternoon to Brussels for a conference on the Monday. That aircraft went down the runway at Heathrow straight into the reservoir. So 3 of them were killed. So the Navy said to me, would I do 6 months extra? I was bang at the end of my career. And it suited me and it suited the Navy, and that was good. I was flying around the world, wearing myself out. So yes, we were getting married, didn't have a job, saw an old edition of the UK Press Gazette looking for reporters, ITV in Plymouth. So I went down, did the interview. They gave me the job verbally. And I said, well, they said, when can you start? And I said, well, actually, I've got to move 2 houses, move out my fiance out of a house in the Wirral. I've got to move out of a flat in Watford. I've got to come to the West Country. I've got to find somewhere to live. I wouldn't mind a honeymoon and all that sort of stuff. And stupidly, I said I could do that in 3 weeks. They said, yeah, that's fine. So yes, we did all that, moved 2 houses, got a few days honeymoon in Ibiza. Came back on a Friday, rang them up and said, rented a farm. Rang them up on the Friday and said, where do you want me on Monday? Long story short, they said, well, we've actually had a reorganization and the job doesn't exist.
Oh, my goodness.
So I've got a wife, a baby, a farm in the middle of nowhere, rented, and no job. And I'll be quite honest with you, mentally, I spiraled downwards. I was 30-something. I'm never going to work again, blah, blah, blah. So my new wife was the one that held me together, to be absolutely honest with you. And it took 9 months for me to get work, which was as a harbour master in Cornwall, ace job, 120 applied, and I managed to get it. It's another story, really.
Again, another selection process where you got through.
Yeah.
And so was that so you were based in the West Country, harbour master. Was that your job for quite a while? Was that?
It was actually the worst job I've ever had. I needed to work, and I thought it was running the harbour. It wasn't. It was about car parks, property, leases, all that sort of stuff. The harbour more or less ran itself. So yes, I can't say I enjoyed it, but I desperately needed to work. So I was very happy to have the job. I did start writing a book while I was harbour mastering. And one of these incidents, I call them God incidents, where I met someone who was a printer and he said, well, I'll print it, you sell it. And it really sold quite well off the kitchen table, as all these businesses do. And that developed into a publishing company a few miles away in a place called Liscard. And I ran the publishing company for probably 30 years.
Wow.
But the BBC used to use me as their naval expert. So they used to send me all around the world doing stuff. From the Falklands to Hawaii. That was tough.
So you had the boring day job of being the harbour master to pay the bills. But do you think that kind of maybe opened up the opportunity for you to be creative and maybe take on these media opportunities as well?
Yes, just that.
Right.
Just that. So, yeah, I wasn't a full-timer, but, there was all these things going on, and I suppose they didn't have any particular expertise. By then I'd done 11 years, I think, as a naval officer, so I could talk intelligently about it.
Wonderful. Well, we're gonna take a break shortly, just to round out part 1, and then in part 2, I'd really like to talk about your more recent years, your work in Gossport, community work, projects that you've had and might be considering at the moment. Also, I know your business stuff where Maritime Heritage Tours. But just to round out this part 1 of your early life, I suppose we got a clear idea there of your life, and then in the West Country. What brought you back to Gosport eventually?
Divorce is the answer to
Okay.
that one. Honest answer, there's stuff we haven't touched on. One is I became a Christian at age 15 in Gosport, which actually altered my life considerably. Believe you me, I've not been the perfect Christian throughout those years, but that's always been an important issue, as you know, in my life.
So let's make space for that story if you'd like to tell it, Mike.
Yes.
Your relationship with God and over the years, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I was
share
very
that.
happy. As a 15-year-old hoodlum, my mate and I went to an event in Walpole Park, which was a spin-off from the Billy Graham crusade. And we'd worked out...
Sorry, what's the Billy Graham crusade?
Sorry, Billy Graham was an American evangelist who was over here. It wasn't him himself, but it was one of his assistants. Actually, it was a live stream from Wembley Stadium, I think. Anyway, we went there to let the marquee down because we worked out how that if you undid that rope and that rope, the whole lot would collapse on 300 people.
Just as a jape?
Well, it's what 15-year-old boys seem to do. So, yes, we went along and with, for a laugh. Yeah, I suppose it was when you're 15 to encapsulate the congregation in canvas. Anyway, we're there. And long story short, I'm absolutely captivated by the message that this guy was giving from Wembley Stadium. And so it was do you believe, do you not believe? And I decided, yes, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. So that's where it all started. And here we are today. I'm vice chair of Churches Together in Gosport. But I've been a bad lad in the middle, but God's in the forgiveness game, as many people listening or knowing events that have unfolded in their lives in Gosport.
Right. I think that's important to recognise that part of your life, which clearly has played a massive part and still continues to play a massive part in your life, Mike. Do you think, just to round out the stories, do you think there's anything else we're missing you'd like to get on the record about your life, those formative years and life?
No, I mean, my life was at a boys' school, joined the Royal Navy, in those days, all boys. I think I was frightened of the girls, to be absolutely honest with you. I certainly wasn't married even in the Navy. That sounds a bit odd, doesn't it, being frightened? But apprehensive, let's put it that way.
I don't think it does sound strange. I think there's a lot of that going on these days as well, where the gap between girls and boys, and there's still a lot talked about how, even in a co-educational environment, how they can get on together and stuff. So.
Yeah, I was pretty not desperate, but keen to get married. So I think I got married at 34, which was obviously far too young, but that's how it was.
34 was probably a ripe old age by some people's standards.
Yes, of course. But I'm talking about me for a minute.
Right.
But I many people know this, but I was a seaman officer, and seaman officers are at sea, and you go from ship to ship to ship to ship. I was a navigator. That's where you earn your crust. I did have one shore job, and being a Gosport guy, I'm sure I was expecting to have my shore job in Gosport. But of course, in true Navy style, it was sent to Rosyth in Scotland for my shore job. But, when you're 23, 24, do you want to be in Gosport in Privet Road with Mummy, or in Singapore Naval Base where I spent a lot of my time? Answers on a postcard.
I think that's a very relatable story from the conversations I've had with people who've had the same kind of career. And certainly so there are some similarities between your story and my story, even though my story was not the Navy and joining up. Yeah. I think I got married in my early 30s, divorced in my 40s, and moved to Gosport in that time as well. But certainly I think there's the similarities there of when you're younger in the 20s, that lifestyle of traveling a lot, being away from home is great. But then a lot of people kind of, by the time they're ready, there can be this, I've done that, been there, and I kind of want to have the stability and of kind of the being in the same place. And getting married was certainly a big part of that for me. Probably some similarities there as well, probably regrettably as well in the long term. I don't think I was really ready, but I have two wonderful children out of it. So yes, I think that's a good way of rounding out part one. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll talk about your return to Gosport. We'll come back to, you mentioned churches together. We've also mentioned, I mentioned your bookshop in the bus station, and I'm sure there's other projects and community work that we want to talk about. So come back and join us. We're going to take a short break. Come back and join us in part two, where we'll hear more about Mike's amazing work in Gosport. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back to part two of Gosport Stories with Mike Critchley. It might have been a minute for you. It's been a couple of days for us, as Mike had to run off to Cornwall. So now we're recording this on a separate day. If you're watching on YouTube or on the Spotify video option, you'll notice that. If you're listening on the audio, I hope it's seamless. So last time, Mike, we were talking about your past history in Gosport, and we finished on a note talking about your relationship with God, which I understand was really important to you, and it was really good that we got that into that part one. And so in this part two, the idea is we talk about what's going on in your life currently and in more recent years, anything you might want to raise awareness of for people listening, anything help you might need or messages to put out. And so my first point there is to ask you mentioned being vice chair of, is it Churches Together in Gosport?
Yes, that's much later life. I think we left it when I was 15, when I became a Christian, so there's a lot in gaps in between. But sure, I am vice chair of Churches Together here in Gosport. Great job, and I mentor ex-offenders as well, so put the two together and I'm quite busy.
Perfect. So tell us about Churches Together in Gosport then.
Well, it's an umbrella organisation of all the churches here who pay a fee once a year, and we do events together. The church, you could say, was divided by denominations. We believe 95% of the theology, the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, but we argue about the 5%, and it's all a bit sad. When you think of it, your daily newspaper, we all select a different newspaper, don't we, which we feel happy with. And I guess that's the same in the church world here in Gossport, as it used to be called.
So it brings together churches or Christian places of worship.
Yes.
Yeah, but of any denomination. So you've got the Baptists, the Reform,
URC.
The Church of England, the Catholic Church as well, right?
Yes.
So they're all part of this organisation.
Yes. Yeah.
That's lovely that they can work together on that.
And
you mentioned events. What kind of events do you do?
Well, we've had major events. In the biggest church in Gosport, seating-wise, is St Mary's Elverstoke, 340 seats. And there's a very well-known Christian musician called Graham Kendrick, who's been composing music all his life, very big on the Christian music scene. So, yes, he came to St Mary's and gave a concert. Every seat was full, down to our monthly prayer meetings, which is in a different church each month. And you don't get those sort of numbers, but we consider that's the power, meeting to pray once a month.
How did you get involved?
It was after COVID, and everything stopped for COVID, didn't it? And I was asked to either close it down because we'd been through a pretty tough time, or breathe new life into it.
So it was an existing organisation, but then you got involved post-COVID.
Correct.
Kind of breathing new life into it. What's it going to be now, kind of thing.
It's a national organisation that Churches Together in every town, city in the country. It's not local.
So it's like so it's a national idea, but it's up to each area how they do it. And
I'm sure it's different.
Okay. So what's the story with that then? How's it been?
Well, we came out of COVID. I think the first meeting was about 3 people, and people cooperated. People do want to cooperate. And we say we're a part of a Christian church family. But the trouble is we don't know family members in a church half a mile away. So there's a number of events that are put on to bring people together.
Okay. Cool. And has there been any kind of big challenges with it you might want to highlight?
Not really. I mean, it's every church does its own thing, and then Churches Together probably does 3 or 4 events during the course of the year. Okay. There was a big march down the high street for Good Friday and a service in the Ferry Gardens. Fortunately, the United Reformed Church own a very lovely gardens in off Spring Garden Lane for
Ah,
barbecues. And, it's not all Bible reading and prayer, that we know how to let our hair down as well.
events.
Social events,
Gotcha.
absolutely.
Okay, so if there were people interested in getting involved in the Gosport Churches Together organisation, what would you say to them?
Well, it's always difficult, isn't it, the first time to walk in anywhere for the first time. Some churches are vast, others are much smaller and friendlier. It's always good wherever you're going to have someone to take you with you just that first day, to step over the doorstep, really. So, yes, I mean, the churches together are becoming really modern. We actually got a Facebook page now. I mean, goodness me.
So is that what you're saying in response to my question? Find the Facebook page.
Yes, that's easy.
Okay. What other options are there? As you say, it's about making a connection, finding someone to walk in with that first time. How would I go about that if I was interested?
Well, all the churches have phone numbers. Not all of them, most of the bigger churches have admin offices which tend to open in the mornings. If your nearest church is the C of E in Elson, just tap in C of E Elson, or actually go and knock the door.
So you're saying the way into the Gosport churches, the churches together in Gosport, is via whatever church you want to,
Yes.
you might want to join,
Yes.
and then that's the way to kind of join in. Okay, wonderful. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, the churches in Gosport are growing. It's quite interesting how young people are just going to church. Bibles are being bought. We have a Christian bookshop in Gosport, which is pretty rare, in Bemisters Lane.
That's a good follow-on. Tell us a bit about the Christian Bookshop. You volunteer there, right?
Yes, all the staff are volunteers. The competition, of course, is Amazon. It's far too easy to sit at home and order a book, whereas in Bemisters Lane, you can walk in and browse gifts, Bibles, the whole range. I'm sure many people know it. It's been there many, many years.
So Beminster, just in case, because I don't think I was aware of it until you told me about it. So Beminster's Lane is that lane that goes off the high street to opposite Hasler Road, wasn't it? Where there's an old pub that's up for sale, the Georgian Dragon.
Correct.
Is that right? That's that little passage through there, isn't it?
That's right. Mm.
So down there, there's a Christian bookshop, and you can go in and get your books and find
Christmas
out
cards, Easter cards, all that. Gifts for Mother's Day. It's well stocked.
And do people travel from far and wide to come to that?
They do,
Is it mainly
yes.
for Gosport people?
I think I'm right in saying that there's none in Portsmouth. Yes, I do a Thursday morning shift in there and meet some great people, actually. That's why I do it. And they do travel distances, to be in a real bookshop rather than ordering on.
That's really nice. I'm really passionate about the high street and getting things into the high street. So I think that's a great story alongside other organisations like C2U, Gossport and stuff, where they're providing life into what would otherwise be seen a lot as a kind of very dead and not much going on high street, and providing places for people to come together. That's wonderful. And then you mentioned, as we were talking in the introduction, about how you mentor, how did you put it?
Ex-offenders.
Ex-offenders. So tell us a bit about that.
I nearly said I have a bit of a history in prisons, but I've taken an interest in prisons since my day as a councillor in Cornwall. We tried very hard to get a prison built in Cornwall. It didn't happen. The money went to the West Midlands, which was probably right. But because of that, I've spent a lot of time visiting people locked up. Here in Gosport, like every other town, we have people in a halfway house that have done half their sentence normally, and they come here to be readjusted into normal life, you might say.
Is that in the common parlance? Is that like people on parole, as it were?
No, it's people that have literally been sentenced. I'm thinking of someone who was sentenced to 4 years. So he's done 2 years locked up, and then he comes to our IOM house, as they're called.
IOM?
Don't ask me.
Okay.
It's a halfway house.
We'll find out.
It's a halfway house. It's pretty strict. They have their own manager and they have their own restricted hours when they can go out. But it's not prison, and it's halfway between the prison and normal society.
Okay, interesting. And so in this instance, and you've been voluntarily going into prisons and talking to people serving their sentences. In this instance, what you meet up with them, mentor them?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there was a charity in Leon Solent called New Foundations, um, run by a charity. And I started off with them. You start off with a guy in open prison, and then you graduate to, if that's the right word. I've recently been helping an ex-murderer readjust to life.
Wow.
Well, 98% of the people that go to prison come out. And what are we as society going to do about these people?
It almost feels like, hearing that, my first reaction is to worry about you and worry about Gosport. And what would you say to someone listening who might worry about thinking that there are people like that in Gosport?
Get used to it. The judge, the man I'm thinking of, by the way, he's not even in the area, so I can talk openly about
Right.
it. He's now living and working on a friend's farm in Cornwall, so it's not, don't get worried about that. But yes, I mean, 3 minutes of madness and 16 years locked up. But for the grace of God, we go many of us, really.
Right. Okay. So, and do you think, you say that and you reference God, do you see the work that you do with ex-offenders and helping them to hopefully, I suppose, not reoffend?
Yes, that's the big thing.
Yeah. Do you see that as a ministry? Is that something you do as part of your faith, or is it more?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as just a concerned member of the public, I've had a very middle class naval officer background, and I just love it that, other people have not had that background that I've had, and I meet some rough diamonds. They're good blokes, but they've done something stupid, and some of them probably mentally unwell. They've not had a chance, and there's people that I can think of that have just gone from prison to prison to prison. That's their life. They're institutionalized, and it's trying to break that mold, really. I spent quite a lot of time in Germany trying to copy their system. Their prisons are much more, I suppose, more thought's gone into them. There's a Christian-based prison in Germany where the prison officers and their wives and family live in the prison. Now, you say that here, people's eyes pop open, but they have a superb reoffending record. When I was doing it, I think their reoffending rate was something like 18%, where I think we were something about 82.
Wowzers. Okay.
Introducing these young guys to the concept of a family. If they want to eat, they peel the potatoes. So you've got 1/3 of the residence was the prison officers' family space, and 1/3 was a big table with family and 5 prisoners sat round the table, and the third area was a bunk space for 5 guys.
Wow, that's kind of inspirational there, Mike, and bless you for that work. I suppose the question I'm left with is, I am inspired by it, and it's something I've often thought about, how best I can help people. I suppose there's a question there, is if there was someone listening who maybe felt called to help, what would your advice be to them there? Get in touch with an organisation?
Yes, the Ministry of Justice in Fareham, actually, the probation office there. The need, as we speak, is for ex-service people to mentor ex-service people who've ended up in the prison system. So you become a volunteer for the Ministry of Justice. There's quite a few hoops to jump through, and they would love to see you.
So, wow, that's a call out then. If you're an ex-service person...
No, it doesn't have, you don't
have to be.
No.
But we know that there are lots of ex-service people. It's a good example in Gossport.
Yeah.
If you're an ex-service person and you feel like giving back to someone else who's served, who lost their way, this is an option for you. This is something that you can potentially do. Wow, that's really inspirational. Thank you, Mike.
I think the thing I've learned, I used to run the tourist information place down at the ferry, and I think I'm really surprised that the big thing I learned from that was the loneliness in Gosport and any other town. Let's be honest about it. And people would come in there not to pick up a leaflet to go to the Hovercraft Museum or something. It was just loneliness, and across the ex-service community, it's big. Widows, widowers. It's a huge issue in this town.
That brings us on to a good topic. I mean, I think we touched on at the beginning of part 1. That's how we met.
Yeah.
So I was taking on Gosport Marine Festival, and you were taking on the Tourist Information Office, which had been previously been publicly funded, hadn't it?
Correct,
in the old bus station by the ferry. And then a decision was taken to not fund it anymore. And so rather than let it sit empty, you went in and ran it as a kind of bookshop, gift shop. But as you're saying, it more than that, it's more of a kind of drop in and have a
Very much
chat
so.
kind of place.
Very much so. It was in a rough part of town after dark, so I got involved with people that not everybody wants to get involved with. There was quite a big drug scene down there, so I would go to the funerals when these guys passed on, which happened. But Gosport's no different to any other town, but I just found it was job satisfaction, I guess, is the thing that I got from that. I could have sat at home at my age in a rocking chair watching daytime television or something. So there were a number of us, don't give any praise or glory to me. It was a team that did this. And I was very sad when the decision was made to knock the bus station down. It was a strong, solid building, but it was scruffy. Very keen to recycle it, but councils don't seem to like recycling. They like to knock it down and build something new. So anyway, it ended, and it's all high tech now. If you find one of these screens that can tell you all about tourism, where I'm still a believer of leaflets for grandma to have when she takes the kids out.
It's certainly something I focus on in my role as a community person, a community activist, and also kind of a marketing consultant, is often trying to work out, remember not to leave people behind. So it's certainly something one with this podcasting is I'm kind of feeling, how do I get these conversation and these words into the hands of people who often turn to me and say, what's a podcast? Or I don't even know how to do that. In fact, I was with my aunt and uncle, who are not by no means elderly, but they're retired, and kind of going through it, and how are they telling them about the work that I was doing and encouraging them to access it. And that can be challenging. So that's a really point. One thing I want to say is, I know I felt at that time, and this is a few years ago now, that you unfairly might have received a bit of criticism for taking the Tourist Information Office on, because I think there was a perception that maybe you were, what had been previously funded and publicly funded was now you were turning it into a business. And how would you respond to that?
Well,
because I know how I responded at the time, so I'll put it to you.
Well, the council was out to save money, and I think the figure was £59,000 that it saved by sacking the staff.
A year.
A year, yes.
Right.
So I rocked up. I got lots of congratulations from council leaders and etc. for taking it on rather than just board it up in the bus station. Yes, we were all volunteers, and yes, I had some books in there which I used to sell. I didn't book a holiday in the West Indies on the strength of it, I can assure you. No, it was good fun. It really was. And we met some superb people. Very surprised at the people from overseas who just come off the Gosport ferry and need a bit of direction where to go, which of course they haven't had now for a year or two. Hopefully something can come back. It's the one-to-one, the human being to the human being, not on iPads or laptops or fancy. It's the one-to-one telling people what's good about Gosport. And there's lots of good about Gosport.
Well, hopefully we can get that. I know that there's a lot of change going on with those plans, with the park that is going to be built on the site of the old bus station. But I know that what unites everyone is we want visitors to Gosport to have a good impression of it. Regardless of what party you are or how you feel that money should or shouldn't be spent. I think that unites us. So yeah, that's a really good project to have heard about, Mike, and I want to say thank you for doing that, because I think it did serve a really good purpose.
Thank you for enjoying yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I think it's very nice that you say you enjoy yourself, but also I think it was a lot of work and a lot of effort, and not always thanked and seen in the way that it might have been. So I just want to say that to you on behalf of people. So I guess, are there any other projects you want to talk about? Any other?
I have a small travel company that started when I was writing books in Cornwall. I came back to Gosport after 40 years in Cornwall, so there's got to be something pretty good about this town, hasn't there? Yes, I when I was writing books, I also set up a travel company basically to take old sailors to places in naval history. We started off with Hawaii. That was tough, of course.
Well, it's a long way away.
It is. I did it twice.
So when was this? Take us back. Tell us the story.
About 15 years ago. No, maybe more. But People were ringing me up. I was editing a magazine called Warship World, and they say, we know all about Pearl Harbor. Why don't you take us there? So I'll have a go. As I've got older, the Hawaiis have fallen off, the planning. But no, we still do it. And where are we off to soon? Norway and Denmark. We've done some wacky places, Senegal, Russia, where I met my wife.
So let's paint us a picture. So we're talking about a group of people, and as you said, they say, we want to go to Hawaii. And so you, being the man you are, you say, okay, let's do it. And you put together, okay, we're going on these dates at this time, we're getting this flight kind of thing. And then everyone books together and goes together.
Yeah, anyone can book a flight to Hawaii. It's getting the program the other end that these people want to do. They're not all ex-sailors. I say they're people that are aged 18. Did they want to join the Navy, or were they going to be, I don't know, a dentist? And actually they became a dentist, but they've maintained that interest in things naval. So they were the sort of people that have come on these tours. It started off with a lot of naval people. Now it's very much watered down. Naval bloke has a good time. Can he bring his friends? Those friends say, can I bring my friends?
So that's what makes it different from any other kind of holiday or tour operator. There's a focus on the sea and maritime interest. So if you're interested in joining a group of people and going and on either, not always on the sea, is it? You do cruises and on the sea.
Recently done cruises, yes, from Portsmouth actually. I think if I was honest, the older I've got, the less I want to race around the world. And we tend to do Malta every winter because I can't stand Gosport in the January, February.
You mean the weather in Gosport?
Yes. So and a lot of it is people make suggestions, and if I want to go there, we'd do it. If I don't want to go, we don't do it. It's as simple as that. So how much longer that continues for, I'm not too sure. But Maritime Heritage Tours is the name of the company if you want to rush off somewhere or other. But
so you've got over the years, you've got a community of people who go on these tours. And how many numbers are we talking about on a typical tour? Just to paint a picture in people's eyes. You're talking about hundreds?
No, we don't want that many. You never want more than 32 because that's about the average size of a bus when you get the other end. You don't want 33, that's for sure. So no, some tours are really quite small. It's not all been sweetness and roses. I've lost quite a lot of money over the years. And I've made a few bob as well.
And things, if costs get out of hand?
Well, yes, and people cancel. I've done a lot of ship chartering off the Croatian coast, which I absolutely love. They have 19 cabins, so you divide the cost by 19, and if you only get 16, you're losing money.
The loss, got you. And is it mainly couples? Is it single people, or is it just a mixture?
It's a mixture, but people hate paying single supplements for rooms. One of the reasons why we go to Malta, because there's no single supplements there in the winter.
So, sorry, just decode that for me. So if I'm a single person and I want to go on holiday, what you're saying, on some locations, I'll be paying the same as if I was paying for a cabin, a room, and all, as if I was a couple.
Yes.
Right.
You have that room, but you don't need a second person there to make it pay.
Gotcha. Okay. So that can be a factor, and you bear that in mind when you put it together for people, particularly for this Malta trip you're talking about.
Yes. Malta's very, a lot of people have served there in the Navy, so a lot of people want to take their wives, partners back to remember the good times in certain areas. I've also learned that you don't fill a program 7 days a week. When I first started, I filled every hour, let alone every day, and it was ridiculous. So now I guess we fill about 50% of the week.
Why is that?
Because people want to do their own thing.
Okay. So they want to be able to come together at times and opt into, we're going to get on a bus and we're going to go to this location and see this museum or gallery or whatever it is. And sometimes they just want the freedom to do what they want to do. Yep. That sounds good and sounds really exciting. So you said Maritime Heritage Tours, if people are interested. Yes. What have you got coming up?
We're going to Denmark in August to join a really ancient ship that's going to sail to Bergen in Norway. They have a steam festival there for every 4th year. So if you don't do it now, you've got to wait 4 years. And it's steam everything. It's a bit of a boys' trip, to be honest. But we have ladies going.
Hang on, no, well, I'm sure there are ladies
Yeah, there are.
who enjoy steam as well.
We have some great ladies that come on our trips, yes.
Wonderful. So that's Maritime Heritage Tours, if you're interested. How do people find it? As a website?
Yes.
Get in touch with you?
Website,
find out.
yes.
Go out via the website. Okay, so and I'll give you space to think about some big topics, but I've got some prompts here to remind me of some nice questions to ask you, Mike, as we move towards the end of our time together. Out of everything that you've done, what's been the most interesting or fun part you could pick out?
I would go for my time. I was press officer of Prince Charles as he was in those days, and that was a very privileged thing to do, which I talk a bit about, but not 100%. Yep.
So this was when you were in the Navy?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So you must have some interesting stories to tell there.
Yeah. He's my sort of age, let's be honest, but he was joining the Air Force for a bit, Navy for a bit, Army for a bit. And one of the things he did as a sub-lieutenant was he embarked on a ship called HMS Minerva that was going to take him to the West Indies and those sort of places, all part of his training. And I was one of the 4 fleet public relations officers at a place called Northwood.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in part 1. Yeah.
So
you joined that voyage to...
No, I flew ahead.
To set things up in advance.
It was a very, very rough passage, poor chap.
So you were an advance man?
Yes, I was, yes.
Okay, really interesting. Well, that's a really good taster, Mike, of some of your naval stories. And I think we talked about in part 1 that it would be really good to have a podcast episode specifically outside of Gossport Stories, the Gossport Stories project, which is what you're listening to or watching right now, which, as a reminder, is supported by Gosport Borough Council. Thank you very much to Gosport Borough Council and the councillors and officers there for the grant that made this podcast possible. But I think that's a really good teaser to say we'll record a dedicated episode separately of you telling stories about your time in the Navy and anecdotes, because I think anyone listening to this, if you let us know, but if you've enjoyed this conversation with Mike, let us know what you'd like to see, and hopefully you'll join me in thinking that would be a really good thing. And also there's an invitation, Mike, is one of the things with the Gossport Stories is my original vision for Gossport Stories is that it wouldn't all be hosted by me. And I did expend some kind of time and effort thinking who best would be the best person to do it rather than me. It's turned out I've ended up doing it largely just because of time pressure and trying to work out how to best to manage the project. But really there's an invitation for you to carry on this mantle. And I know we've tried out a short episode where you did an interview with a visiting friend from Cornwall, Claire, in which you can check out that podcast that short podcast for just 15-minute chat in the feed. So there's an invitation to you, Mike, if people and to listeners and watchers out there, if you'd like to hear Mike in conversation with someone, whether it's part of Gosport Stories or otherwise, let us know. And that's for you, Mike. If you maybe will, there's an invitation to do more of this if it's...
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so any closing thoughts? We had some stuff about the fun stuff. Is there any kind of closing message you want to share with people about Gossport, your vision, how you feel about Gossport?
Loneliness is the passion that I've got to try and do something about this loneliness. It really is a serious issue. Things are happening. I guess I've just been introduced to it from my days at the tourist office and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of good stuff going on. And I guess it's something you're never going to crack totally. But, at my age of life, I realize how fast life just roars past. So I have no wish to sit in a rocking chair watching daytime television. So all the time I'm fit and healthy, which I am at the moment, I'm very happy to do stuff.
So you're going to continue on with your work, and that's kind of your key thing, is what's motivating you is just bringing people together.
Yes.
who might feel isolated
Yeah.
and lonely. And if there are, and so you're saying that that's your vision. And so if people want to join you in that, what would they what would you say to them?
There's already people doing this. I'm not reinventing the wheel. Probably the best thing is to go to MySpace in the high street, where there's already a lady called Claire Shaw who's doing some good stuff, but she's was made redundant recently, so it's all a bit, where do we go from here? Very happy to work with Claire. She's a good woman.
So
What's this space?
look out for those opportunities to get involved,
Yeah.
to get involved in community work is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, she has 60 people motivated to go and just cheer up people who are on their own, be it through medical issues, be it through relationship issues, bereavements, all relevant to loneliness.
Okay. And I know I can probably signpost there's an organisation, Community First. They used to be the thing, Gosport Voluntary Action, GVA, but that now has become I think it's become the Gosport branch of Community First. So I'd signpost people to Community First as a place to look. I think they run a befriending service as well.
That's how Claire lost her job. That's had its money removed. So she's doing it out of her own pocket at the moment.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening or watching to Gosport Stories. Keep your eyes and ears open for future episodes. Just a reminder, this is an amazing project funded by Gosport Borough Council. I would love Gosport Stories to continue on beyond the grant that I've got. In order to do that, I either have to get another grant or I have to find someone willing to foot the bill to sponsor it. And in order to do that, what I really need is people to show that there's a need and that they're enjoying it. So what you can do to help there is you can subscribe to the podcast, you can leave a comment, you can share it. We're doing little bite-sized clips and YouTube videos that are coming out on all your favorite social media channels. So please do share that, ask people to get involved. If you have a Gossport story or you know someone in Gossport who has a story to tell, get in touch with me. You can Google Media Space or find me on social media. Please do get in touch and let me know. But for now, we'll leave it there. And thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. Goodbye.